Zac Cramer from EOS Worldwide joins us this week to talk about ConnectWise's new distribution alliance, the buzz at IT Nation, and news from Ingram, Micro, and Acronis, plus a special guest interview with Kris Blackmon from JS Group on the secrets of turning techies to rainmakers. It's ChannelPro Weekly number 246, The Taste of Red. Hello and welcome to ChannelPro Weekly, episode number 246. My name is Matt Whitlock, technology editor, online director, and your host of this fine show for folks out there like you. And who are you? Well, if you're driving around in your car or sitting in your office, you might notice something in front of you. It's probably a computer. It could also have a coffee mug on your desk, maybe a notepad, maybe a pencil, but the computer is the interesting part because that signifies what you might do for a living, and that is you might be a VAR, you might be an MSP, you might be an IT integrator, an IT consultant. You do technology-related things with other businesses. That is usually the general gist of that. Now, if you are solely a gamer on Twitch, you might learn something here too, and you might consider a career change. I don't know, but we welcome you one and all to the show. Joining me each and every week is the man of the hour, the guy who keeps the subway trains running on time when he's here, executive editor Rich Freeman. Welcome, Rich.
Well, thank you, Matt, and welcome to the eye of the storm.
Yeah, so you're in the middle of you're risking life and limb to do the show in your hotel in Florida as winds and rains pound the side of the building. Is it really that dramatic? Is it like a scene from a movie, or is it just kind of a storm?
I would say this is so folks understand what we're talking about here. I am in Orlando right now attending ConnectWise IT Nation Connect. And Hurricane Nicole has been blowing through today. I would love to, pretend that this is evidence of my dedication to the task. And I'm in a hurricane to do this for you folks, but there's like 4,700 people here, and the storm really I haven't had a chance to look at the news. I don't know what's going on elsewhere in the state of Florida today. I'm sure this is a harder day for other people around here, but here at this hotel, at this event, very strong wind, a lot of rain, but the power's going. You can tell the Wi-Fi is just fine, and life is chugging ahead.
Well, I'm glad that it's not an idea
on the hurricane front.
Sorry, what was that?
Okay, so you know how with these events, there's always all these sponsors: the gold sponsor, the platinum sponsor, the bronze sponsor, right? And there's all the tables. There should be a hurricane sponsor. Like, if you run a big enough event, you should get to name the hurricane that impacts your event. Like, I think they can make big money on this. I think somebody should take this to marketing.
That is a brilliant idea. And for those listening or watching, they're saying, who is that person that is just speaking to us about hurricane sponsorships, which is, for anybody running an event in Florida, that should be the mainstay, right? And in Midwest shows, we need tornado sponsors too. We can have those. We can have all that stuff, but who is that person? That person is a self-proclaimed recovering entrepreneur. After exiting as MSP, became a full-time EOS implementer that now spends his time helping leadership teams get what they want from their business. The man of the hour, the other man of the hour, I'm going to say, because Rich is usually the man of the hour, but this is the other man of the hour, the awesome, the fabulous Zac Cramer. Please welcome.
Hello, and thank you guys so much for having me on. Pleasure to be here. And yeah, sorry for I jumped in before I was even introduced, for which I apologize. But I am indeed Zac Cramer, former MSP owner, now EOS implementer for MSPs, and super excited to be here.
No problem at all. Glad you're here. Glad you're back. This is not your first rodeo with us. You were on in a landmark episode. You were on episode 200 when we did that one quite a long time ago. So glad that you are back. Always great to see your face. I know for those who are following kind of a lot of the stuff the ChannelPro does, you've been you did some of our virtual events. So you might have seen your face a little bit more recently there. So but it's awesome to have you back on the show. And I'm glad that you're not in a hurricane. That's always a nice thing too.
No, it was. I mean, I'll say it was a little chilly this morning, so I did have to put a coat on. So I mean, Rich, I'm right there with you in suffering, which is I was slightly cold an hour ago.
That's actually the funny thing, Zac. So Zac is in Portland, Oregon. My home base is Seattle. And I was talking with somebody and Matt and I will probably discuss this shortly. ChannelPro did an event in Southern California last week, and I was talking to somebody else at that show who lives in Portland who was saying, hey, the Pacific Northwest, it's going to get chilly up there. It's going to get cold. And I was thinking, well, I'm going to Florida, so weather's not going to be an issue for me.
Right.
Little did I know.
Little did you know the cold probably would have been preferable to massive storms. So, well, Rich, you mentioned the event. Zach, I'll give you an opportunity to let us know a little bit more about you and some of the things that you're up to these days for our audience who may not have caught a previous episode or event. But Rich, you mentioned Southern California. We didn't do a show last week, so thanks, folks, for tuning back in with us this week. And Rich, why did we not do an episode last week?
Because we were doing that show in Southern California, in the Los Angeles area. Actually, it was our 6th and final in-person show of 2022, and a biased assessment here, but it was a rousing success. Big audience. Thank you, everybody who came out to the show, and great content. And I was waxing a little not nostalgic. I'm looking for a word and not coming up with it, but I was feeling a little wistful, Matt, that this was the last time we were doing some of these sessions we've been this year that have been so successful.
Yeah, it was a fun content package. Zach, did you get a chance to catch it?
No, I didn't get to attend this year. What were the highlights?
Well, we did. So I moderated this session that we called the Security Slam. It was sort of inspired by poetry slams, and we had 3 security experts on stage, and they each told a story, a real life story that was, instructive for the audience, but also very entertaining. And then we let them kind of pick who wins the slam. And nice. Our colleague Colleen Fry had this great, very interactive session about launching an Azure practice. We did a session that Matt was a big part of that was kind of inspired by the dating game show. And this was all about employee recruiting and retention. And there was another session inspired by Survivor that we called MSP Survivor. And that was all about, surviving the M&A landscape and so on out there. So it's like fun formats, but really, really high value, informative stuff. So it was a good year. We've kind of set a bar that now we've got to clear again in 2023. Not quite prepared yet to talk about what we have in mind. We have ideas, and our first in-person event of 2023, I know it's in February. I believe it's in Dallas. But find out yourself, folks, by going to events.channelpronetwork.com and checking out the calendar for next year, because people are signing up, and we're going to be back out on the road again before you know it.
Yeah, we do have early signups going on now. We definitely have a high bar. So I will say it's only downhill from here going forward, Rich. We got some fun stuff in the hopper for next year that should be also really good. We'll just have to kind of see how it goes, but we're not going to talk about too much of that stuff yet. But Zach, hopefully we can get you out to one of our in-person events next year, which we are going to have. How many?
Definitely going next year.
Yeah, how many are we going to have?
We are going to have, depending on how you count, I guess 8. We'll say 8. Oh. And then, so we're doing more. And then the last of those events, and some of them a little bit in the works, but the last of those events will be 100% focused on security. It'll be the first time that we've ever done an in-person event that is that subject specific, and we're gonna go deep on security, folks. So looking forward to that. And then 7 events in 7 other cities over the course of the year that are in that more traditional, wonderful ChannelPro SMB forum kind of format. We'll be covering cloud and managed services and business better and all those good kinds of things, in addition to security.
Not gonna want to miss it, folks. Yeah, you're not gonna miss it, and hopefully we'll see Mr. Zac Cramer joining us for at least one of those. We'll just have to see how we can plug you in. But Zach, it's great to have you here on the show. It's great to go through some of these stories that we're going to start covering. But first, I'd love to give an opportunity for you to tell people who may not have caught you in a previous episode a little bit more about you, kind of your background, what you did with your MSP, and kind of what you're doing today, because it is different than what you were doing the last time you were on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I started my MSP about 15 years ago, back when security meant have you installed antivirus on somebody's computer. And took it forward from there. And what we found after about a decade and a half is I'd gotten bored, for lack of a better word, doing the same thing for a really, really long time. And in our process of growing the MSP, we had implemented EOS, the business operating system. People are probably familiar with the book Traction, which is all about how you run your business, right? What's the right and best way? What are the right tools for managing and operating a business? And coming to the end of my run owning the MSP, I said, this is a lot of fun. I like doing this. I bet other MSPs would benefit from it. I'm going to go help them do it. And so started, talking to other MSPs, and they said, absolutely, help us do it. And just kind of found myself here in this second career, helping other companies, improve the health of their organization and improve the health of their teams, and get traction on the road to where they want to go.
Cool. And about how many clients have you worked with since starting down that path?
I started down this path about 3 years ago, and since then I've worked with about 25 different MSPs.
That's great. Wow, that really is. It shows a lot of demand for kind of what you're doing. And for those who are not familiar with EOS, what is that all about?
So EOS is all about three things. It's all about making your company have a centralized, organized vision. So having everybody rowing in the same direction, everybody knows what the direction in the future is for the company. It's all about how you get traction against that vision. So what do we need to do this week, this month, this quarter, this year, so that we can achieve our vision? And then finally, it's about increasing the health of our teams, which is so important in the current era when employees are so hard to keep and retain and train. And it's how do we make this a fun place to work? How do we make this a place filled with coworkers where everywhere you look, you go, wow, I like that person. I want to work with that person. I'm excited to come to work every day with this group, and I would never want to leave this company for another one. And so it's a simple, time-tested, tried and true principles and tools for getting those outcomes out of your business.
Very, very interesting. So, and you said this is a learned thing out of a book, or have you kind of put your own spin on the advice that you're giving and the way you're implementing this?
Yeah. So one of the great things about doing the EOS process for me is I'm not a business consultant. I don't come in to become a parasite who just sits there for the next 25 years, sucking money out of a company. I teach a system. I teach a set of tools, right? Here's how we do these things. And usually after about 2 years, my clients get to go. Right? Okay, cool. You learned it. You can run it on your own now, right? You teach a fish versus fishing for somebody. And so the system itself is baked in. It's solid. And then I bring my own spin to it as someone who owned an MSP, who knows a lot about MSPs, just in the details, right? I understand how the businesses work, and I can give the specific advice in the specific direction that helps MSPs, shape up in the right direction.
Very, very interesting. So when you're not doing EOS stuff, I know we were bantering a little bit before the show started about how we haven't gone to movies in a while, but we still watch movies and stuff. But what are the kind of things you like to do outside of the EOS world?
Well, we were talking about the new Weird Al movie, which is like 5 stars, highly recommend it. Daniel Radcliffe, Harry Potter as Weird Al, just brilliant stuff. Outside of that, I do photography. So I like to take a lot of pictures. That's a lot of fun. And I like to chase my cat in circles around the house. So my house is a circle, all the rooms connect, and my cat has figured that out. And so my cat will start running in circles around the house, and I will chase the cat around the house. And great fun for everybody involved, particularly my partner, who just likes to hang her head in shame and just be like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm chasing the cat in a circle.
Rich, this is an amazing day for me. I never thought the day would come, because there's a quote, a line in a Beverly Hills Cop movie, Beverly Hills Cop 2, I believe, where he's kind of squatting in this mansion, and he starts talking with a contractor that there's not supposed to be any right angles on the house in order to get the contractor to leave. And this is Eddie Murphy. He goes, a man wants to live inside a donut. Let him live inside a donut. And I never thought I'd meet anybody who actually lives inside of a donut. This is amazing.
I haven't seen that movie in years. I forgot how much I liked those movies, though. Those Beverly Hills Cop movies are extraordinary. And yes, indeed. All the rooms connect. It's a big circle. I'm done. My life, I've now lived my life completely. I can just retire. And I'm glad I could bring that to you. Episode 2, what'd you say, 246?
246. This is it. This is the end for me.
This is the singularity. You have officially closed the loop, and now you can rise into the ether.
Oh, this is fantastic. I love it. I honestly never thought the day would come. So I'm just absolutely blown away that you actually live inside of a roundhouse. That is just awesome.
Yeah.
So and what kind of cat do you have?
His name is Mittens. He is a short-haired orange cat with white feet. And so that's why we call him Mittens, because he's got the white feet on the orange cat. And he is the delight of my life, the apple of my eye. It's great with consulting. I don't have any children, and with all the flying around that I'm doing all over the country, I'm glad for that. Mittens does not get too sad when I leave and come back.
Yeah, I used to have a cat. They're usually pretty good on their own for about a week, and they don't normally care whether you're there or not, for the most part. So
at one point, I put a webcam in the house so I could watch what he would do when I was gone to see like if his behavior changed. And it turns out that my presence is completely optional. He behaves exactly the same when I'm not there. Like he doesn't do anything different. Goes to the same places, sleeps, eats. I was just like, oh, this is how important I am to your life. Nothing changes if I'm not there.
That's awesome.
I will quickly point out that this cat made a cameo appearance on episode 200. We have seen this cat if you are into the video version of this podcast.
Oh, that's right, because it was during COVID, so I was doing everything from home. And we all know that the thing cats will do as soon as a webcam is turned on is put their butts in front of it.
That's a written rule in cat law that anytime there's a camera on, you have to do that. So,
yeah, 100%.
Very cool. Well, I know, Rich, I know, Zach, I'm really glad you're here. I can't wait to get some of your insight on some of these stories and talk about that. I know we talked a little bit more too about kind of your MSP background in the last episode. So folks, if you want to learn a little bit more about Zach, go to episode 200 and see that and see his cat's butt as well. If that's something that you're into, go and check that out as well. But we got a lot we got to get to, including a show that's called ConnectWise. What is it called, Rich? ConnectWise IT Nation Connect. That seems like a tongue twister to me.
But you got it right. That's what it's called.
That's a lot of connect in one title, but that we're going to be talking a little bit about that. Some stuff from Ingram Micro and Acronis we're going to be talking about. We got an interview coming up later on. Cross our fingers because we're recording this tomorrow and we're going to kind of splice it in due to scheduling reasons. But if all goes well, Kris Blackmon, the chief channel officer at JS Group, is going to be joining us, and we're going to be talking about some really cool stuff as well. So make sure you stick around for that. But we got a lot to dive into and a very hard stop for today. So Rich, what do we got in the news? ConnectWise is who we're talking about, which makes sense given where you are. They've signed a distribution alliance with somebody. Who did they sign it with?
Yeah, well, and I'll tell you this, the show kicked off yesterday. As we're recording this, there was a keynote last evening. And so essentially, we're going to be talking about the news that has been announced so far. A few hours from now, they're doing their big product roadmap keynote, and I think we're going to learn some more. And we'll talk a little bit about what I do know so far about the product news. But what they announced yesterday that I thought was most significant was an alliance agreement with Arrow Electronics. So one of the big names in the distribution world. Now, I mean, ConnectWise has, and presumably will continue to have, relationships with all of the other big names in distribution, Ingram, TD SYNNEX, D&H, et cetera. But this, from what I can make out of it so far, is kind of a special relationship with one distributor in particular. And what's going to come out of it initially is the ability for ConnectWise partners to do quoting, procurement, subscription management, client billing, et cetera, directly inside ConnectWise Manage. So the thing that they created was that there's going to be a special kind of extra integration between ConnectWise and the ConnectWise platform and Arrow that's going to make it easier for ConnectWise partners to transact business with Arrow and just transact business generally, work with the distributor, because you'll be able to do whatever you need to do with them from inside the PSA system. Every ConnectWise partner who creates an Arrow account, a dedicated rep, credit line authorization within 48 hours, Arrow is saying, and as an incentive, just initially to kind of get people to check out Arrow and create an account, et cetera. For the next 90 days, if you're a ConnectWise partner and you set up an account, you will get an immediate $10,000 line of credit from Arrow. This was positioned from the stage yesterday as the first, the down on a ongoing, deeper strategic relationship. They didn't really hint at what they might have down the road, but this is apparently just where they're getting started. There are some other things they have in mind that are designed to kind of ease or eliminate some of the friction that channel pros can run into in working with their distributors. And actually, we'll get into some of that similar kind of stuff when we're talking about Ingram Micro a little bit later in the show. Another thing that they announced yesterday a new tech apprenticeship program that they've launched with CompTIA. It's called Ticket to Tech. They're going to go out and find people who are looking to start a career in IT, because we obviously know how huge a shortage there is of tech talent out there right now. And so they're working together. They're going to enroll a bunch of people in a 17-week course, get them set up to take the CompTIA A+ exam, get them set up to kind of promote themselves, create a resume, create a social media profile, etc. So an effort basically to help close that giant talent gap that we all know is out there right now. And then, you know, there was some interesting conversation from the stage basically about the state of the landscape in the industry right now, and the way ConnectWise kind of positioned it basically is it's kind of a, you know, best of times, worst of times kind of scenario out there right now, where most ConnectWise partners are telling ConnectWise that it's been a good year and they expect next year to be good as well. That, you know, there are a huge number of SMBs out there with an enormous range of technology needs, but at the same time, we all know you know, economic issues are looming out there. Security remains this giant problem. So there are a lot of things out there are working against the ConnectWise partners and MSPs in general out there right now as well. And one last thing I'll just bring up is I had a chance to meet with Peter Kajawa yesterday. A number of us in the media did, actually, and he runs Service Leadership. Service Leadership is the consultancy that was originally founded by Paul Dipple, who won a ChannelPro Lifetime Achievement All-Star this year in recognition of the incredibly rigorous database that he created at Service Leadership, where 4 times a year, they collect data from thousands of MSPs around the world, and it provides really the industry's best sort of pool of benchmarking data. If you want to know how you're doing in relation to your peers in a really rigorous kind of way, there really is no better source of data than that. And Peter, you know, Paul is now retired. Peter is running Service Leadership, which is part of ConnectWise. ConnectWise bought Service Leadership last year. And here's some interesting data. Just to give you a sense of the you know, best of times, worst of times, maybe way to think about what's happening in managed services right now. The most recent data set that they collected was from Q3. And overall, MSPs in aggregate in that data set said profit was up 11% in the quarter. Double digits, that sounds great. Now what Service Leadership does is divide that giant pool of MSPs into 4 quartiles: best performers, worst performers, median performers. MSPs in the top quartile, the top 25% as measured by profitability, they saw their profits go up 17% versus the average of 11% in Q3. MSPs in the bottom quartile averaged a minus 10% profitability number for Q3. And, you know, there's a hard cutoff in these quartiles. Obviously, that cutoff was negative 3.8% for the bottom quartile. 100% of the MSPs in the bottom quartile lost money in Q3. And so it really does kind of give you a sense for the enormous divide right now between the operationally mature MSPs, the ones who are kind of doing, you know, following the kind of practices Zac is teaching people, and the ones who aren't right now. And are, you know, suffering as a result. And as Peter pointed out in the conversation, you know, the bottom quartile of MSPs, negative 10% profitability in Q3. And as far as we know, we're not in a recession right now. Like this, this is happening in good times, and things could be getting worse from here. So this, you know, he was saying this is the time to really start figuring out where you're leaking money, where the problem is, because you don't have time to start making some headway on that.
Rich, can I step in on that for a second?
Yeah.
So where I'm seeing this a ton in the lower performing MSPs that I've talked to and taken a look at is they're too afraid to raise their prices by the kinds of numbers they need to raise their prices by. You know, people are still trying to think, oh, I should do, you know, I see people waffling about if they should do a 3% price increase when inflation is running at 9%, right? If you're not doing at least a 9% price increase, you're not even staying even, right? Much less, pulling ahead in profitability. And, to allay some people's fears, I have seen MSPs this year do 15%, 20%, 25% price increases and lose none of their customers, because that's just where the market is. It's what people are willing to pay. And so I think a lot of those people in the bottom, they're getting squeezed on all the bottom end stuff. Their employees are getting raises, their rent is going up, their PSA costs are increasing, but they're just not, I'm seeing they have too much fear and they're not willing to pass those costs through to their customers and do the kinds of price increases that are necessary for profitability.
It's interesting to hear you say that, because that is exactly what Peter at Service Leadership honed in on. I mean, basically, when he was talking about that 11% profit number for MSPs in general, he said, if you really kind of dive into the numbers, expenses were way up, inflation, obviously, and the shortage of tech talent means you're paying more for tech talent. So overhead was up. And the only reason that MSPs in aggregate did that well is because there was a fair amount of organic growth, and there were a lot of MSPs, particularly at the upper end of the spectrum, who raised their prices because of inflation and their higher, and one of the hallmarks of an operationally mature MSP, according to Service Leadership, is that they're not only willing to raise prices when we're in conditions as we are right now, but they'll build it into a contract, basically, that every year, the prices are going to go up X%, or they're going to keep up with inflation, whatever it is. But it's not just an occasional reactive kind of thing, but it's just part of the discipline of running the business. As we add solutions and people and grow and expenses go up, prices go up for our customers as well. And that not only does that not present a competitive problem for these operationally mature, it's part of what enables them to be so successful.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest misconceptions or things I see people do wrong in this is they don't raise their prices for years, and then they have to raise them by so much that their customers complain, right? Nobody ever gets a thank you card that says, thank you for not raising my price last year, right? All they get is the email saying, oh my God, I can't believe it's going up so much this year. So for the folks who have it built into their contracts where it just increases 4% every year, right? Their customers are just used to that little bit of increase that's constantly happening, versus the companies, oh my God, we haven't raised our prices for 10 years and now we need to set it correctly. And we have to do a 40% increase because we haven't done those 4% increases for 10 years. Not to mention, of course, obviously, if you do 40% in 1 year, it's less than doing 4% every year over 10 years because you're not compounding the growth over time. So nobody wins when they wait to do price increases. Everybody loses.
Very, very interesting. And I guess when your costs are going up and you have no ability to cut costs, you have to raise prices, right? Like there's no other real choice.
Yeah. And there's nothing in MSPs that is getting cheaper. There is not a single cost that is decreasing, right? It's more security solutions. It's more people at higher levels who can do more complicated things. There's nothing I've seen in any MSP that's going down in price.
And so if the more experienced or say mature MSPs are raising prices, what's the fear of someone kind of towards the bottom raising prices? Because then you're just matching at what everyone else is doing. So it's not like they're going to go and find something cheaper somewhere else.
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of fear, especially for people who don't participate in service leadership, who don't have peer groups, who don't see what's going on. And also, as we know, most MSP owners were just technicians who found themselves with a business. And so they don't necessarily have business training or business acumen, right? They're used to being technicians. And so when these bigger questions come up, sometimes they get a little stuck. They don't have the tools and the resources to necessarily make the best decisions.
Yeah, interesting stuff. What else are you seeing in the, other than just saying not raising prices? What if there is a business that is price competitive or is keeping up with price, but is still losing money? What are some of the areas that they should look at?
The biggest thing that we're seeing right now, that I'm seeing in the companies that are being successful, is they are selling so much security, right? They have made the crossover. They have understood there is no longer such a thing as an MSP versus an MSSP, right? There's no difference anymore between what we do and what the security companies do. And every MSP needs to be a security-focused company, right? Customer service is still important, but it's now taking a backseat to security for most of our clients. And the companies that have made that transition and brought on the right people and the right solutions to sell them to their customers are having a lot of success. The companies that are still saying, hey, we do the tickets, we make sure the computers get set up, but we outsource the knock over here and the SOC over here, and call these people when you need your audit. Those are the companies that are really falling behind.
Very, very interesting. So Rich, there was a couple of things we talked about in the story about the distribution agreement with Arrow. We don't talk about Arrow as a distributor on the show a whole lot. Maybe they're just not in the news a whole lot or whatever. But when I think of the the distributor, the big ones, I think of Ingram and TD Synnex and those. Is this is this a big deal? Is this something that ConnectWise people are really going to love? Is it something that we're going to see a relationship with TD Synnex with another PSA kind of firm? What impact is this having?
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I mean, I haven't, first of all, I haven't had a chance to talk about this with very many of the MSPs here. My guess is this is one of those things where, it was like the last thing they talked about in the keynotes yesterday. It was sort of like the one last thing. Hey, before we go, one last thing. From a ConnectWise standpoint, this is kind of a big deal. And there was this executive from Arrow who came out, into the hurricane to help announce this. I suspect the folks in the audience are kind of waiting to see, well, what is this going to mean to me? And so the question will be, does life get noticeably easier and less painful? Does it get easier to get stuff from a distributor because of this incredible integration that supposedly is coming to them? ConnectWise is clearly very excited about what this can mean. No, the ConnectWise partners haven't really seen it in action yet. So let's hold on that question and see what people are saying maybe 3-6 months from now, how big a deal it is, because sometimes it's hard to tell. And we'll get into this a little bit again when we're talking about Ingram in a few moments. Sometimes a vendor announces something and it's a little bit hard to tell what it's going to mean, and then down the road you realize, oh, actually that is kind of cool. So we'll see.
Okay. Well,
yeah, the word integration just doesn't seem to mean anything anymore. Like every time somebody announces an integration, like, do they mean I can do a catalog pull and look at what was available, or do they mean that like you're going to sync my ads, moves, and changes? Like, so I get very wary about the word "we've developed an integration" until those details come out about what exactly that means.
Yep. Agreed. So I guess we'll just revisit this one down the road. I'm sure we're going to learn a little bit more about it. But with that, we've got a lot still to cover. So let's move on. And I see a little sentence here in our show notes that you can use to guide our discussion here. And there's no link yet, but it says a few words about product news from IT Nation. So Rich, do I get to decide how many words you get to use?
Oh man, you're gonna hold me to a word count? You're gonna have to give me a ticker or something so I know.
So 8 words or less.
Oh boy, yeah. Good luck. I can't clear my throat in 8 words. So the reason there's no link is because I haven't written the story, and I haven't written the story because, like I said, the product keynote comes up in about 4 hours as we're recording this right now. But I did interview a couple of product executives yesterday, and so I got some hints basically. And there was one thing that in a very brief way ConnectWise announced in a press release yesterday. So they have a new product that they're releasing at the show. It's called ConnectWise Access Management. It's all about managing access rights. The thing that's kind of, there are 2 things that are kind of cool about it. I need to learn more about both of them. One is that they have architected the system in a way that it doesn't rely on usernames and passwords. It's sort of leaning on technology built into ConnectWise Control, their remote access system, to create these sort of secure temporary sessions when access rights are needed for certain things. And in particular, this is designed to help MSPs with a use case that I personally have not been haven't heard a lot about from MSPs. But just last week at our show, I was chatting with our good friend Josh Liberman, an MSP in Albuquerque from Net Sciences, and he pulled me aside at one point and said, "Do you know of a product that does temporary access right elevation?" Because I have customers who will call me and say, well, I don't have access rights to, admin rights to this product, but I need to make a change. I need to, upgrade the software. I just need this one thing. And Josh is asking me software out there that will do that. And I didn't know of anything. And we spoke with somebody else and came up with a name or two. That is something that this ConnectWise access management tool will help you with. If you need to give somebody temporary elevated rights to do one particular thing, two particular things. It can do that, and then as soon as that session ends, any elevated rights that you've granted to this user just disappear. So we'll learn more about that product. The other thing that I expect them to talk about a little bit here today is that they will be adding network management capabilities to their RMM platform, ConnectWise RMM in particular, which is the new next generation RMM system. I don't know a lot about the functionality. The thing that I know that is interesting is that it is based very, very heavily on software from a as yet unnamed third party. So this, there's the build, buyer, partner kind of thing that vendors do. And in this case, what they did is partner, but they didn't, Zach, they didn't just create an integration with this third party network management tool, whatever it is. They created this very deep strategic relationship where they are really at a source code level embedding this third-party company's network management software inside the RMM system. Again, I'll learn more in a few hours what that looks like and what that means. But what's interesting about that, what I'll just sort of call attention to, is there's a resemblance there to what we just talked about with Arrow, right? So ConnectWise will continue to have relationships with lots of distributors, but it looks like at least they've sort of picked a special buddy in the distribution world, Arrow, and similar kind of thing in network management. I don't know what vendor it is, but they have a special buddy in network management that will be more closely tied into the platform, even though that, as they told me emphatically, we're going to continue integrating with all the other network management companies out there. So that this is turning into a pattern, basically, where when they don't build something themselves or buy a company, they will, I think now, pick a favorite and go deep with that favorite, while also maintaining integration ties and relationships and so on with the other players in the market.
Zach, any thoughts?
Yeah, neat. I mean, we keep watching the space act like a Transformers robot, right? Where just like everything keeps getting bolted on to everything else and everybody keeps buying everything else. I'm a little bit amused because I believe Arrow was the original PAX 8 partner. I believe that PAX 8 got started with Arrow. And so I imagine that there are some corporate boardrooms where some people are holding up fingers at each other, over that one. But no, I mean, more integration, more better. And again, like you talked about, having it integrated at the source code, so it's a part of the software as opposed to just a connection to the software, usually makes things go better than the other way around. So again, like you said, it's been announced. Cool. Shrug. See what happens.
See what happens. I wonder if when they're writing up these contracts with these relationships, if it actually said special buddy agreement in the title of the contract. That seems like a business term. Yeah,
that would be better than what most contracts actually end up saying.
More businesses need special buddies. I think
do. So. They really do. That's one of the things I miss about being in the office. A lot of us have gone all remote, and the office dog. There used to be that dog that was everybody's buddy, just like wandered around the office, and everybody liked the office dog, and no more office dog. And I think that's the biggest casualty of remote work.
And everybody had a box of like milk bones, so like the dog ended up being like 700 pounds because the dog would wander desk to desk and keep getting treats.
Yeah. That was that. There were some health implications for the office dog. That's true. I mean, there's always upsides and downsides.
Fun stuff. So Rich, we got another story we're going to move on to, and this is from another distributor. Ingram Micro is out there talking, and they say, well, for the IT industry, we're recession proof. Is that true?
Sorry, Rich, go ahead.
Just in a word, not so much. But what the Ingram folks were saying. So I'll take two steps back here. So I'm in Orlando at ConnectWise IT Nation Connect, which is like 15 minutes away by car from the one partner conference that Ingram did in Orlando this week. So this truly has been a whirlwind week for me. On Sunday, I flew from Seattle into Miami, actually, for the Acronis conference, which we'll talk about. Then Monday night, I flew to Orlando and I went to the Ingram conference. And then yesterday, I Ubered over here for the ConnectWise conference. At the beginning of the Ingram conference, they talked a little bit about the issue that's on everybody's mind. What's 2023 going to look like economically and for the industry? And basically, the message that they said was that they are continuing to see a pretty strong growth. Now, not so much in some of the markets that were super strong in 2020 and even 2021, right, where everybody needed a laptop and a webcam. We've seen quarterly financial numbers from companies like HP and Dell that have shown that those particular segments have definitely slowed down recently, and we knew that was coming sooner or later, and it has. And without getting into it in detail, clearly Ingram has been seeing that too. But they said, data center, networking, cloud, hybrid security, they're seeing rapid growth. They're seeing good, solid growth going on there, and they expect to see that continue, basically. So, I mean, they are full steam ahead. They were saying they're on this sort of strategic plan that they put in place a few years ago, and they wanted to emphasize we're going to continue to invest exactly as the plan said we were going to, because we have no reason to believe that at the very beginning of the show, they thanked the partners in the audience, which vendors always do at these shows. ConnectWise did it yesterday. Thank you for being a partner. But in this particular case, Kirk Robinson, who runs the North American business at Ingram, said, despite like 18 things that have made the last 2.5 years really, really difficult for everybody on planet Earth, Ingram is coming off of 2 of the best years in its history. And thank you, partners, for making that happen. So they're feeling pretty good about where they are, and they're feeling pretty good about where they see things going. The main thing I wanted to talk about coming out of that Ingram show, though, was this platform called Xvantage. And this goes right back to what I was talking about before, where sometimes something gets announced and you don't quite know what it is or how big a deal it's going to be, and so on. And Xvantage is a good example of that. Earlier this year, I had a chance to interview their chief digital officer, Sanjeev Sahu, over there. And this was when they were first sort of announcing that we're going to have a tool called Xvantage. It was not fully in production at that point. And they made a point of making sure I understood this thing isn't a portal. I don't want you to think of this as a portal. It's not like, the online entry point for dealing with Ingram. They will refer to it variously as a digital twin of the company or as a digital experience. This is in the truest sense. I normally hate this buzzword, but this is really digital transformation for Ingram, and they were positioning it to me as a strategic big deal for them and a competitive differentiator. I don't think that began to click for me until this week. So they've got 41,000 partners of their partners worldwide on Xvantage right now. It's not available everywhere in the world, but it's available in the US and Canada and Germany. 25,000 Ingram partners in North America are using Xvantage now. They expect to have pretty much everybody on that platform by the first week of December. They've been kind of pushing people onto Xvantage. And basically, this provides the fabled single pane of glass for doing business with the company, but in ways that are sort of difficult to summarize. It's basically enabling partners to processes that previously involved a lot of phone calls, a lot of email traffic, or maybe multiple different interfaces. You can do all of that in one place at one time, typically on your own. And it was interesting. So they invited an MSP to come up on stage and talk about it, Xvantage. And so this is someone they invited to come speak about it. So you can kind of, if you're a cynic, say they handpicked the person who is happiest with Xvantage. But she came up, she said she was talking with one of her employees who is super excited about Xvantage because this guy said, I've gotten like half my day back because all of this friction is out of the way, and I can get stuff done way faster. So okay, this is the handpicked MSP saying that. Well, Matt, I ran into Kris Blackmon, of Red Knight Consulting. He's spoken at our events. He's been a guest host on the podcast before. He's an Ingram partner. We were chatting about Xvantage. And if anyone from Ingram in the audience is going to love to hear this, but he said he was talking to one of his techs recently who I called him out. You got to see this thing. It's amazing. And he didn't specifically say it's like saved me half a day or whatever, but this tech was like so excited about this thing. He didn't even know what it was called, that he wanted Kris to know about it. So this it's apparently making an impression on Ingram partners already. And Kirk Robinson, who I mentioned before, was saying this is a game changer for us. Ingram believes that the ease of doing business that Xvantage is going to enable is going to be a serious competitive differentiator for them. So this was a strategic big bet to hire Sanjeev to create this platform, and they, and it took a while, and I'm sure it took a lot of money, and now they're beginning to collect the dividends on that. It's very interesting to start hearing these very, very early kind of initial impressions from partners about the impact that this is making.
So Zach, is it a portal?
I mean, I got to say, I turn to you guys for my news, just like all of your listeners do. And so I'm apparently the 41,001st person to learn about this. So this is news to me. I mean, I haven't heard about it from any of my clients, so it hasn't risen to that level. But I'm excited to go check it out and see what it looks like. And if a distributor finally actually puts some money into user interface design, right? I mean, that would be a sea change in how distributors approach their websites, and would be a welcome change.
It does sound like it rolls a lot of cool stuff in there. Rich, I think you were going to say something. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to follow up on something that Zach said that has been on my mind a little bit this week, which is that you are talking, Zach, with the owners, the whatever presidents, founders of managed services practices, and those folks typically are not the ones who are on the phone. And at a company, yes, but your clients are not on the phone with Ingram all day, so it's their employees. Right. Who are and that's what that's true with Kris. It's true with this MSP who is on stage. So it's an interesting thing for Ingram. They want this tool to be a competitive differentiator, but the people they most need to impress aren't the ones necessarily who will be interacting with this tool. So the hope from an Ingram standpoint will be that they have people talking, just like Kris's employee said, "Oh my God." Ingram is hoping that this happens more broadly.
Yeah, and can we spend 2 seconds talking about this IT is recession-proof thing?
Yeah.
Like, just real quick, right? Because, I mean, I get that what Ingram Micro is saying is, don't slow down spending money with us, okay. But the thing about it, whenever I hear that, and I've lived through 2 recessions now, right? I started my company in 2006, right? So I went through the 2008 recession, and then the one that came after that, I don't remember what year that was, is our clients go out of business. Right? Like, I don't care if the clients we keep are increasing their spending, maybe we're selling more security services, yada, 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 but clients literally just cease to exist. And particularly coming into this recession, we have a set of circumstances that has never existed in America before, which is companies are coming from a period when the government gave businesses more free money than the government has ever given businesses in the history of this company. The PPP loans, the EIDL loans, the ERC tax credits. And so companies are drunk on free money that is starting to run out. And we actually, at IT Assurance, the IT company that I started, just recently lost a client that went out of business. And when they did the exit interview with that client let them know that, they tried to hold on and they got their EIDL, and they, took a year and a half to run through their whole EIDL, before they ran out of that. So as all of those programs have ended and as all of that money comes out of the economy, businesses are going to go under. And when they go under, those are our clients. So I just think there's just nonsense to imagine that there won't be any impact to the IT industry from a recession.
And that's consistent with the message from ConnectWise yesterday, basically. I forget the exact quote, but Jason McGee, the CEO, basically was saying the question you have to ask yourself is, are you prepared? Are you prepared shorter term for what's going to happen with respect to the recession, but also longer term with the trends happening in the industry? And so that's, I think, what's going to determine how recession-proof your particular business is. I think the companies that are prepared and are operationally mature are going to be in much better shape than the ones that lose a bunch of clients for the reasons that you cited, and just aren't positioned to bounce back from that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, agreed. Well, there's a lot here in this article to kind of dive through. I know we're just kind of touching the surface of these and kind of giving our thoughts and opinions, but I encourage you to go to the show sheet for channelpronetwork.com for episode 246. If you want to read along while we kind of talk about these, and there's links and stuff to go and learn more. If you're on your phone, you can open up the description area. We do put the links in there. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks for watching on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, hit the notifications, hit all of those buttons, because there's lots of them and they're all good except for the thumbs down. I see you eyeing it, but you would never want to press the thumbs down button while watching Channel Pro Weekly, would you ever? No, of course you wouldn't. So only the thumbs up button if you can, and leave a comment as well. But if you open up the description area there, we put links to all these stories in there, so you can kind of read along and kind of get all of the fine nitty gritty detail while we talk about these. So Rich, we got two more stories that I know we wanted to get to, and they're from Acronis. Can we talk about these together, or can
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and talk about what Acronis has, because they have new stuff, as all of these companies tend to have on occasion.
So yeah, so it's funny, we're going through my week backwards again at the Acronis show, and they had two they announced a number of different things. Very interesting show. I if there hadn't been so many shows going on this week, I would have spent more time there. But there were two particular product announcements worth really calling attention to, and one is they have added an EDR solution to Cyber Protect Cloud, which is their entirely unified, all-in comprehensive data protection platform. So Acronis does security and BDR in a very integrated kind of way, and we can talk a little bit more about that in a moment. A piece, and a relatively significant piece, that was missing from the platform up until now was EDR, and they've got an EDR solution very, very close to joining the suite as well. And their CMO, Michael Callahan, I hope, yeah, it's either Michael or Matthew, but I believe it's Michael. He addressed this straight up in a media briefing, and he said, why was it not until now that we added EDR? And he said, it's really hard to do this well. And Acronis has, very high standards in terms of they do these kinds of things. So difficult task. They took their time. They're adding that and kind of, rounding out the platform in that way. The other new product that they announced is kind of interesting, though, because it is a PSA solution. So why in the world is a security and BDR vendor introducing a PSA product? If I had the opportunity to stay at the show longer and interview more executives, I could have asked this question and heard it in their words. I can kind of give you my take on it, because you hear, if you're an MSP and you have a PSA product from a company like ConnectWise, it's like, why would I get a PSA from Acronis? I think what Acronis is doing is basically they are creating all of the tools, all of the solutions, but all the associated tools to enable an IT provider of any kind to create a managed security practice. So you're going to need endpoint security and email security and EDR now and BDR and file sync and share and all the other things that Acronis does. But if you're going to build a recurring revenue generating managed security practice, you also need an RMM and a PSA. Now, they have already had an RMM for a while. It's called Acronis Advanced Management. They did not have the PSA piece of the picture and until now, and that's coming out very soon. And this is a very robust, from the sounds of it, a very robust PSA product. It does ticketing and billing and all sorts of very detailed time management and measuring and reporting and metrics kinds of tools. This is not just a quick and dirty kind of ticketing solution. And it reminds me, Matt, one of the other companies that won a Star Award from ChannelPro this year was GoTo. And GoTo used to be LogMeIn. Earlier this year, they adopted the GoTo name. They introduced this kind of new rebranded unified communication solution and an associated brand new sort of combo PSA RMM solution. The reason we gave them the award is it was this really interesting kind of recurring revenue in a box kind of opportunity that it created, where you have the, if you're looking for a way into that world, here's a unified communication solution that you can offer, and a tool that you can use that's very, very tightly integrated with the unified communication solution. So like everything you kind of need to manage and bill and support and deliver that service. And I believe what's going on at Acronis is a very similar kind of strategy around a security service. You can not only just the security and BCDR products from them, but everything you need to run a security practice. So, but it's interesting to see more companies now, to this year, that are not managed services, IT management companies like Kaseya and Datto and Enable, et cetera, get into the PSA space. It's does two make a trend? Maybe, and we'll see who else maybe is going down this path.
Two's company, three's a trend, four is a crowd, five is a football game. I don't know. We'll have to see what it is. Zach, what do you think?
I like this idea that 5 is a football game. I think touch football, right? Like I think you could play with, you could do a 5-on-5 touch football game. It's either grow or die if you're these big tools providers, right? So it doesn't surprise me at all that they're getting into the PSA space, because otherwise you're completely at the mercy of the PSA providers to integrate you. And like we just saw with ConnectWise and Arrow, if they pick a special buddy, right, contract term pending, and it's not you, you can find yourself locked out of entire ecosystems. So if Kaseya picks Webroot or something to be their integrated security provider, and Acronis doesn't integrate with it, they're going to be left out in the cold. So they're either going to have to develop their own tools, or they're going to have to get bought by somebody who has them. But I think this is a smart defensive decision to, like you said, help people build MSSP in a box. And it makes a lot of sense to me they would go in this direction.
Yeah. Now, Rich, in the build by a partner, this is not partnering, but are they building this themselves, or did they buy somebody at some point to kind of integrate into this?
I mean, if there's any sort of imported code, they kept it very secret. And knowing Acronis, I would be surprised if that was the case. Actually, I'm pretty sure they built this themselves ground up.
Yeah, interesting. And so is it very? You brought up the GoTo thing. Is it very similar to what GoTo is doing, or are they? Is Acronis putting a different spin on what this looks like?
I'm not. So the PSA thing is brand new. It's not even really in GA at this point, and I'm not familiar enough with the GoTo product to say if there's a different spin. I would imagine there is a different spin, just in the sense that these are purpose-built products, right? Like the PSA product is for managing your Acronis data protection practice. The GoTo tool, GoTo Resolve, I believe it's called, is specifically for helping you manage your GoTo unified communications practice. So you would assume be a different spin on both those systems.
Okay. And there's an important point to make here, which is that we might be tempted, for those of us who have been in the game for a long time, to think the future is just MSPs getting rolled up into private equity, because that's what we're all seeing, right, as MSPs getting bought into these larger and larger companies. But with an ear to the ground, it is shocking to me how many new MSPs are still being started all the time. Right? It is not an industry. It's a very healthy industry. Companies split in half, lead technicians go off and start their own thing. So there are new MSPs being started every single week all over the country who need these new tools. So for us who have been in the game for a long time, we're saying, well, look, I'm already in the Kaseya ecosystem, already in the ConnectWise ecosystem. Making the change would be impossible, even if the alternative was better. But there are tons of new players constantly coming up in the market for whom these might be the right solutions.
It's a very interesting point that it is difficult to make that kind of a change, but that there is still a good amount of new startups coming up all the time and needing tools like this. I want to touch briefly on the EDR component, because they added EDR functionality. Is there anyone left that has a security suite that doesn't do EDR?
Oh gosh, I hadn't thought about it. I don't know. But I mean, EDR really is kind of becoming one of those essential parts of the, if it wasn't already, one of those essential layers in the security stack. Basically, you got to have the endpoint protection, right? And the last layer of defense is always BDR. You got to have that, and you need something. You think about the different portions of the NIST framework and so on, and you need antivirus to deal with the prevent or protect part there, but then there's detect and respond, and that's exactly what EDR and XDR and MDR are all about. So, if there is anybody out there who aspires to have a complete kind of suite of security solutions, who does not have EDR, then I'm sure they're working on that as we speak. And I'm at a ConnectWise show, they've got EDR. So yeah, probably a lot of suites out there that are missing it at this point.
I mean, does anybody really need anything more than AVG antivirus free? Isn't that the gold standard of cybersecurity protection, Zach?
I swear to God, I still meet people today in our industry who say, oh, well, I don't have any antivirus on my computer because I never click on any of the bad things. And I don't meet people in sales. I mean, I still meet like technicians. I still meet CEOs. It is wild to me, people who still have these complete inability to understand how security threats work these days and still think that the only way you get a virus on your computer is because you clicked the wrong email.
It is pretty interesting and pretty funny. I just missed the little did you ever use AVG free in the day? Like they had the little cartoon characters of the guys, do you remember that?
Oh yeah, no, the little four color, the four color icon and everything else. And I mean, that takes us back to the era of Clippy. You know what? That's what Meta needs. Meta's not getting any traction with their metaverse. I think the problem is there's no Clippy. You go into metaverse and there's no one who pops up and is like, hey, welcome to metaverse, and who annoys you into enjoying it. I think that might be what Zuckerberg needs. I
agree. Now they would have to license Clippy from Microsoft unless there is like a different desktop paper fastener that they could model it after, like those little black spring clips.
Yeah.
Would that be springy?
It'll be binder clip the annoying AI. That's what Meta needs.
All due respect, I know Meta just announced they're laying off 13% of the company. And the guy in a meeting who raised his hand and said, I've got the answer, it's Clippy, he's on that list.
Yeah, there's a fire sale on Twitter engineers. Anybody who needs a Twitter engineer, there's no shortage of those available to you. I don't know how many MSPs could use them, but man, how nice is it to eat the popcorn that is made from the burning fire that Elon Musk has turned Twitter into, and just to watch the crow that's happening over there.
It's certainly interesting to watch and not short of entertaining. That's for sure. But if you need programmers, I guess there's some that are available. So go and get yours today at a reduced discounted price.
Seriously.
Is there like a Twitter retail store where you can go pick one of those up? Twitter engineer.
Pick up a slightly used engineer. Morale is low, but it could be restored with a couple of power-ups.
Yeah, Twitter engineers are us, is what I think they could call that. You just go and pick one up, and then there's coupons online that you can get for those too. Well, good stuff. That kind of covers our news and a lot of the stories that we're going to talk about. And I know we have a little bit of fun with you in part 3. So we're going to take a short break. When we come back, if all things go to plan, we will be having a really fascinating discussion with Kris Blackmon. She's the Chief Channel Officer at JS Group. I'm not going to foreshadow what we're going to talk about, but it's interesting, and you're going to want to tune ahead. And if on the other side there is no interview with Kris Blackmon, well, then something happened with scheduling, and we'll just address that later. So hopefully, cross fingers, we have an interview with Kris Blackmon. We'll be right back. Are you an MSP who is recommending Dell hardware to your end users? If so, then you'll want to check out the Dell Expert Network. The new Dell Expert Network program is a rewards and incentives program designed for service-focused MSPs who are supporting the small business market. This program is designed to deliver value and save time for MSPs who are recommending their end users to purchase Dell hardware. Currently, Dell Expert Network customers get an additional 3% back in Dell rewards when they buy Microsoft servers. Check out the Dell Expert Network today. And welcome back to part 2 of this episode of ChannelPro Weekly. Many MSPs get started by techs who decide they would rather work for themselves. But just because they know their way around a client's infrastructure and run a tight ship doesn't mean they know about or have any real interest in selling. Now, sales doesn't come naturally to a lot of people, especially in the tech space. So joining us now to share some secrets on turning techies into rainmakers is the awesome Kris Blackmon, Chief Channel Officer at JS Group. Welcome, Kris.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
I am very excited to have you on, mostly because I watched the session that you did at our virtual event a few months ago. and it was just awesome. I mean, anybody who's listening right now, I'm telling you, this is going to be a real treat, and you're going to get a lot out of this, because we're going to talk about some of the things that we may have talked about at that event, but I know we're going to expand on some of those and talk about a few other things. So I'm super excited, and I think everyone's going to love it. But before we get diving into that stuff, why don't you tell us first a little bit just more about you and a little bit more about your background?
Sure. So my background, I've been in the channel for about a decade, marketing, community building, media, event programming. I ran the MSP 501 for several years. About 2 years ago, I came on to JS Group, which is an industry consultancy. We work with vendors, distributors, partners, trying to figure out some go-to-market strategy. And we do a lot of sales activation and some marketing enablement. And yeah, now I'm here at IT Nation, having a great time at this conference and getting to catch up with people. And it's been a great week.
Oh, very fun. It's always nice when Rich gets to like do an interview in the same room as someone, because we're always very remote.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird talking to another live person next to you in the room. So you said you've been in the channel a decade. I'm really curious, how did you kind of fall into this?
So that's a funny question. I actually was a creative writing and literary theory major in college. And I graduated in 2010, so kind of right in the middle of the recession. And writing jobs were hard to come by. And I wound up as a technical writer for a software as a service company, a little niche SaaS company in Dallas. And then it just kind of went from there. I got headhunted into a B2B kind of channel focused marketing and PR firm. And then TC Doyle brought me on at what was then Penton. I was the VAR guy, so that was fun. We were acquired by Informa, and then we morphed into Channel Futures and the Channel Partners event series.
You know, I got to say, Matt, it would be interesting to collect the how did you get in the channel story from media folks,
Yeah.
because yours is almost identical to mine, where I was, a literary major in college. I landed in Seattle and looking for work, technical writing job. Next thing you know, so yeah, it's funny the way this happens.
The way we get sucked in.
Yeah.
And it seems like once you end up in a channel job, you never escape the channel, because like,
why would you want to? It's such a great industry. You get to work with fantastic partners, and it's all about relationships. And, yeah, I love being in the channel. I'm super glad that I got sucked in here.
It is. Oh, and everybody, it seems like once you're in, and then everybody just kind of, especially on the vendor side, like they just tend to move around a lot. It's like, okay, this person's at this vendor today and at this vendor tomorrow, but no one ever really leaves. So it's kind of fun and interesting how really small the channel is when you start to look at it. So a very interesting background, and cool when we're talking about that. So Rich, why don't you set up the topic here a little bit better as we kind of dive into some of the things that we're going to get into.
Yeah, well, you kind of alluded to the session that Kris moderated for us at our recent event, and it was recent, Matt. By the way, I chuckled a little bit when you said a few months ago. It was about 1 month ago, but this is the world we live in now. And
time holds no meaning anymore.
Oh my God, it feels like 6 months ago. I don't know. Yeah. Because after the LA show, I think I went into like a time vortex or something.
And so this, we were just excited to have Kris be a part of the show, and we said, whatever you want to talk about, we're good with that. And she came up with this idea and the title for the session, which was called From Techie to Rainmaker. The idea being, if you're a technical person who's gone into business for yourself and you don't feel like you know about sales and marketing, what are some things that you can do that are going to be effective, and how big an obstacle does that have to be? And so it was a phenomenal session. And we had a good audience for that show, but we have an even bigger audience for this show. And I just thought, let's let more people kind of benefit from that conversation. So like I said, it was yours to decide what you wanted to focus the session on. You selected that topic and that title. What were you most hoping people in the audience would kind of take away from that?
So a lot of it, a lot of it comes from my own experience and my own personality, because I am terrified of sales too. That fear of rejection and the fear that you're just, whoever it is that you're trying to sell is going to think you're just pushing stuff on them to make money. And kind of developed a process in order to work through that paranoia, I guess. And I knew that I wanted Juan Fernandez and Peter Melby to join me for that panel. And so we had a prep call and just kind of talked through it, like how that process works from an MSP perspective, and mapped it out a little bit step by step. And it was really interesting the way that it came together, and just, again, that kind of process driven system to kind of overcome that fear of sales that so many of us have.
How, I suspect there are a lot of people in the audience right now who are thinking, I'm just kind of not cut out for sales. Forget about the fear of rejection. It's just, I'm an introvert, I'm shy, I have, I'm not a people person. There's a perception, I think, within the channel that this is just not something I'm going to be effective at. How well-founded is that suspicion, or in your experience, do people who take advantage of the right process learn to do it?
I mean, just like anything else, you have to practice it. It's just like any muscle, right? The more you work it, the easier it gets. But you touched on what Peter and Juan and I really identified as the first step, which is mindset. If you think you're not going to be able to sell, then of course you're not going to succeed. Of course you're going to fail. And so just making sure that you're getting in that right mindset. One of the things when I'm feeling relatively insecure in a conversation like that, it helps to remind myself of all the things that I do well, all of the things that I am an expert in. And that gives you a little bit of confidence to go into that process, go into that conversation, feeling a little bit more positive. And so it's just tweaking that mindset is the very first step.
Talk a little about some of the others. I'm really interested now, in how these things that you can do to be more effective kind of lay out as a process.
So really, it's all about preparation, right? The more you prep, the easier the process gets. So we talked about a couple of different things you can do to really do your homework, right? Be a grown-up, do your homework. If you guys don't already do an ideal client persona or an ideal customer profile, then we would highly suggest that you adopt that process for a couple of different reasons. So when you sit down and you say, okay, I have expertise in manufacturing, I relate really well to SMBs, I have the resources available to support 1,000 seats. If you really map out what that ideal customer looks like, then you actually can begin to frame that conversation, because you are more able to really speak to whoever that customer persona is. Juan does this great exercise. If you guys aren't familiar with Juan, you should totally look him up. And he has this fantastic exercise. It's a customer profitability report. And so he sits down and really takes a look at each of the individual customers and says, it doesn't matter how much revenue you're bringing in, who are my most profitable customers? Who, do I spend the right amount of resources supporting? And being able to map that out from that starting point really does help you kind of identify those commonalities and the points that you want to speak to. So a lot of it really is just about doing your homework and preparation.
And in terms of that profiling, I mean, it sounds like basically the more you are building a customer base with some consistent elements to it, the more practice you're getting basically selling to that kind of person.
Mm-hmm. Again, do your homework. If I'll take the manufacturing example again, or healthcare, or whatever the case may be, do your homework, take a look at what the industry is, take a look at what their common challenges are, and start to kind of map that out. And again, the more you have these conversations, the easier these conversations get. We really highly recommend doing like a deal autopsy, right? So after every single sales conversation, sit down, kind of review how that discussion went. What are the questions you asked and their answers? What are the questions they asked you? What were the objections? How did you frame your services? What worked and what didn't? And the more that you do that, the more that you're able to map out that conversation, so that you don't get into a place in future conversations where you're stuttering or, don't know where to go next. It's more of a process, more of a kind of roadmap in your mind.
Talk to me a little bit about what happened. So you do your homework, very essential. Now you're in the room. What are some do's and don'ts maybe about that conversation?
Well, it really helps to have a script to follow. So most of the people watching the show, I would hope, do those technology business reviews, right? They're doing their QBRs or, even monthly. And as you're working through that checklist, it gives you a script to follow, so let's talk about your business. What are your biggest challenges? What are your biggest opportunities? Where can my services and the products and solutions that I sell plug in and help you advance that business strategy? So a lot of times, we will get into a sales conversation and kind of maybe lose our thread, or we will hammer too much on one point, and having that script to follow is really helpful because it keeps you on track, and it also makes sure that you're uncovering all of the information that you need in order to move that sales conversation forward, in order to get to the next meeting, get to the next phone call.
One of the things, and I should have said earlier on, I've never been in a sales role, so I mean, a lot of this is just speculative for me. But one of the things that I imagine would be challenging is striking the right balance between letting the customer talk, listening to the customer, and then positioning to the customer who you are and what you do. Do you have any recommendations in terms of how much talking you should be doing in a given, and maybe it's different based on a first meeting and a follow-up meeting, et cetera, how much talking the channel pro should be doing versus the customer?
The channel pro should definitely be listening more than they're talking. The whole point of these conversations is to get the prospect talking about their business, so that as the conversation progresses, you can identify, okay, here's where I can help you. Here is, where I can sell this customer in and address a problem that they're struggling with, or help them capitalize on an opportunity that they want to go after. And so it's really important to do more listening than you talk. A caveat though, I will say it's very important to have in mind the things that you don't do, right? If you are just looking for project work, if you are looking for break fix work, if you are looking for, whatever the case may be, I'm not the person for you. Right? So being able to set those expectations up front is really critical, A, so that you don't waste time knowing that you're in a sales conversation that isn't going to go anywhere, and B, so that there's no surprises later on. The customer knows what they're getting into, they know what they're getting for their money, the services that you're going to be able to provide, and your business model. So yes, definitely listen more than you talk, but it is really critical that you're able to explain your business model and explain exactly the way that you like to work with customers. Here's how we engage. Here's what our typical SLA looks like, in order to, again, kind of align those expectations, make sure everybody is on the same page.
Is there a process at all in terms of what you should be looking to accomplish in a first meeting, second meeting, and so on?
I would say the first meeting is really that discovery. It really is that chance to sit down and for both you and the prospect to learn about and really understand each other's businesses, right? At the end of that conversation, you should be able to tell, is this discussion going to continue, or does it need to stop here, right? So then you get into that second meeting, and at that point, you're probably bringing in additional stakeholders from your prospect's organization. Maybe you're talking to somebody in the C-suite instead of just the IT manager, or whatever the case may be. And that's the time to really start positioning your value add and your value prop. And this is where your homework really comes in handy, because you can specifically speak to that prospect's needs, their objections, their challenges, their opportunities. You can really showcase your expertise and demonstrate that you have done your homework and that you know them intimately, and you're able to, really help them advance their business strategy through technology.
Is it important in a meeting, any sales meeting, basically, to come in there with a very clear objective in mind and make sure you kind of don't leave the room until you've accomplished that thing?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times we get into kind of a trap when we don't have that script, when we don't have that objective, that clearly defined objective for the meeting. It gets we fall into the trap of just kind of rambling, of letting the conversation kind of steer itself instead of us staying, laser focused on the goal that we want to meet for that meeting. Especially for people who aren't used to sales, who aren't used to selling. If you're an introvert or you're not a people person or all the things that you listed out at the beginning of this conversation, it's hard sometimes to retain that thread. So having kind of, again, that script to follow, here are the things that we need to check off. Here are the questions that I need answered in order to get to whatever the objective is, whether that's the next meeting or the final sale or, whatever the case may be. Here are the things that I need to make sure that I hit on in order to reach that objective.
Again, perception as opposed to experience here, but I imagine you have to get used to asking people for their money. I mean, that at a certain point in the process, that's what you're doing. So I guess, first of all, is that in fact something that people have to learn how to do, and any advice on overcoming that concern?
I mean, that's the hardest part, right? So you can sit down and have, all the conversations in the world, but at a certain point, you're going to have to ask for money. I think it's really important to identify the things you do well. Here is the value add that I am bringing. Here are the services that I am selling you. Here's what I'm going to be providing. And here is my price. Make sure you're competing on value and not on price. You can fall into that trap of haggling back and forth. Well, okay, we can cut costs here, or, I can go down to this rate, or, whatever the case may be. But once that starts happening, then what you're doing is bringing on new business that doesn't wind up being profitable for you, right? So you have to have confidence, in the services you're providing. I mean, look, they need your services or they wouldn't be in conversations with you, right? So you've already, jumped that hurdle. And B, the quality that you provide, the quality of service, the help desk, quick remediation, all the things that you do well, being able to have confidence in that and say, here's why I'm charging you this, here's why I am worth this. Don't fall into the trap of trying to compete on price or, feeling intimidated by the challenge of having to just say the number out loud, right? You're worth what you're worth. They can afford it or not.
I think it's a little bit of a mindset issue too. Sorry, I've been wanted to jump in here into the conversation, but I think it goes back to a mindset a little bit too, right? So like if you're going through your script and you're setting yourself up to really illustrate the value that you have, not as something that you can sell them, but as a partnership and as a solution to solve pain points. It shouldn't be a nerve-wracking thing to ask for money because if you do it well enough, they should want to give you their money, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. You're right. It does go back to mindset. And it also goes back to that practice makes perfect. The more you have this conversation, the easier, truly the easier it gets, right? So, the first couple of times that you sit there and you throw out the price, you sit back and wait, don't try to talk yourself down or whatever. It can get really nerve-wracking. But the more that you practice this conversation, the easier it gets to, really demonstrate your value and be able to message that to the prospect. But you're absolutely right. It all starts with mindset and then doing your homework, doing that preparation, having a process, a script to follow. All of these different things can help instill the confidence in yourself that you really need in order to generate that confidence that the prospect will have in you. The more confident you have in yourself, the more confident they'll be with you.
So one question that I wanted to ask you is how does that change when you're talking to a potential new client versus a client that you already have? Because I mean, selling never really ends. As soon as you make the first deal, you're going to be selling to that customer throughout your journey with them for however long it takes. How does that approach change? How does the script change? What preparation change do you need to make, but from new customers to existing?
You're right. That sales process never stops when we're talking about a recurring customer subscription economy, right? You've got to re-win them every year, every 3 years, however long your contract term is. And then also there is the goal of upsell. It's not just driving towards renewal. You're trying to get as much money as possible. That's why we're in the business, right? So it really all revolves around, I know people are tired of hearing the term customer experience. It's like the buzzword for, during COVID. But everything within your organization has to rest on that foundation of customer experience, because at that point, when you're talking about an existing customer, really the lift on actual sales teams becomes a lot lighter, because it's the people who are interacting with your customers day to day. It's your account managers, it's your techs, it's the people who are really developing those relationships and having those conversations that allow them to say, okay, I'm going to proactively look at this customer, again, where are they trying to go, where are they trying to pivot, where are they trying to grow, and where can I help, in order to recommend whatever that next solution or product or service is that you want to upsell them on. So really that sales process, it goes from that customer success piece, your account management team drives into marketing, and when you're talking about an existing customer, you want to make sure that they're aware of the services and the value that you're providing. So how is your marketing team going to, advocate for that throughout the customer's organization? And then by the time you get to the sales team, really they should just be presenting the price and closing the deal. With an existing customer, that sales process never stops. It has to go throughout every aspect of the organization in order to strengthen that relationship and prove your value. And again, if you're doing your TBRs correctly, if you are having those constant conversations with customers, if you're really engaged and committed to learning about their business, then that lift becomes a lot lighter.
So in marketing, certainly patience is important.
Mm-hmm.
It's, your expectation can't be that you're going to be negotiating a deal after one contact. It could be 4, 6, 8. If you're in a sales situation and the customer, for whatever reason, says no, isn't ready to buy, what's your advice on following up on that? Do you kind of, walk away and that's that? Or is there any kind of process for maintaining contact and hopefully selling something to that client later on?
Well, it really depends, right? So in that first conversation, you should walk away from that meeting with knowledge of, is this a good fit for me or not, right? We don't want to spin our wheels and waste resources, following up and nurturing leads that we know are not a fit on our ideal customer profile, that aren't going to actually translate into profit for us, right? Now, if they are a lead, if they are a prospect that we want to go after, then it is a matter of following up, yes, but don't do it generically. Make sure that it's not just a drip campaign or a newsletter or something like that. We all get emails like this that just delete every single day, right? I mean, I probably get 20, 30 of those a day. So being able to reach out and specifically reference things that you talked about, hey, I remember that in our, last meeting or in our last call, you mentioned XYZ, you might find this resource helpful. It's about continuing to present your worth and your value in conjunction with their business. So you mentioned that you wanted to grow into this vertical. You might find this white paper helpful, or this case study, or, whatever the case may be. But being specific and being personable is really key. I mean, we know that in the MSP space and, the ChannelPro space, it's all about relationships. This is a relationship business, right? And so from the very beginning, from the word go, it needs to be about establishing and developing that relationship. And so don't do generic stuff. If they're really a lead that you want to foster, then spend some time, again, doing your homework, putting in a little bit of the extra work to make sure that you're speaking exactly to where they want their business to go, and referencing back the previous conversations that you've had in order to, again, prove your value and continually make them think about you. The goal, whether it's an existing customer or a new customer, the goal is that when they think about business opportunities or business challenges, you want them to think of you. You want them to draw that correlation in their minds between, here's where I want my business to go. And by the way, this MSP was talking about this service or this solution that might help me get there.
Part of what you were talking about there gets to qualifying the person you're selling to, and that may be more of a marketing function than a sales function. But are there questions that you should ask in a sales meeting to make sure that you are talking to the right person, they are ready to, or you understand whether or not they have budget, what their time horizon is for maybe doing something about it? Is there a qualifying process that should happen in a sales meeting?
Absolutely. That is part of the script. What is it that you need? What is your budget? What is the expected way that, or what is the way you expect this relationship to work? What is your business model? And again, following that script really allows you to make sure that you're checking all of those boxes and asking all of the questions that you need answered. You have to remember that the sales meeting isn't just about proving your value to them. They have to prove that they're valuable to you as well. You don't want to take on a non-profitable customer. You don't want to take on a customer who's not a fit for your business, not a fit for your expertise, that you're going to spend way more time, supporting and hand-holding than you actually are generating revenue from them, So it's just as important for you to be qualifying them as it is for them to be qualifying you. It's definitely a two-way conversation.
Does that conversation change at all depending on who you're talking to? Because I imagine sometimes if you're talking to a business owner, that's great because they're going to be ultimately the decision makers. But as you go up, you might not be interacting with an owner per se, but somebody who's also maybe on like a technical person on staff. So how does the conversation change if you're talking with that kind of a person as to a business owner?
So yeah, conversation absolutely changes because their role in moving that strategy forward changes from person to person, right? If you're talking to the head of marketing, it's a very different conversation than if you're talking to the head of IT, very different conversation than if you're talking to the C-suite. So it's a matter of, again, kind of mapping out that conversation. What are the things that are most important to heads of marketing? What is it what are their objections? What are their challenges that I'm going to specifically speak to, as opposed to the IT manager? When you're talking to the C-suite, they probably don't want to know the nuts and bolts. They could care less about the spec sheets, right? They, again, want to know how your solutions and services are going to propel their business forward. When you're talking to the IT team, absolutely rattle off your spec sheets and, your features and benefits all day long, because that's what's going to resonate with them. Again, it's about doing your homework. It's about being a grown-up and going online and researching, what are the challenges that, marketing leads face today, so that when you're sitting down and having those conversations with people outside of IT, you can specifically address their challenges. And I will say, especially once you bring a customer on, once you are pushing towards that upsell conversation, it's super important to be having those conversations outside of IT. So when you're doing your technology business reviews, when you're, having these conversations with customers, don't just talk to the IT manager, right? Because they're the ones that are responsible for the nuts and bolts, but the people who are actually driving that business strategy forward and the people who are signing the checks are probably not the IT manager, right? So you want to make sure that you are laying the groundwork to expand within that account, to dip your fingers into other opportunities by maintaining those relationships with the heads of line of business, with, upper management and the executive levels throughout the entire organization, because you never know where you're going to be able to plug in. And I mean, you also have to remember, what is the statistic? Like 67% of tech buyers actually aren't in IT. They're self-provisioning, HubSpot or Dropbox or whatever, and then you're expected to come in and clean up the mess, right? So you want to make sure that you have those conversations with people outside of the IT team, so that you are better able to manage the tech that they do bring on, and B, so that you're able to identify those gaps that you can fill and those opportunities for upsell.
So we've been talking about preparation and homework and having a script, knowing what you're going to say when you go into the room. And it just so happens Zoom came out with a product this week that is specifically designed to help salespeople kind of hone their pitch. Should people like literally practice what they say in sales meetings?
Absolutely. Stand in front of a mirror. It's just like if you were gonna moderate a panel or be on a keynote stage, you're definitely gonna want to practice that, right? You don't want to stumble through it. And yes, you'll have the script. Yes, you'll have your check boxes, but the more you can speak with confidence, the higher the likelihood is that they're gonna see your value. And the only way to get there is, again, practice makes perfect. So yes, the more of these conversations you have, the easier it'll get, but you absolutely should practice in front of your team. Have your sales team pitch each other, have your sales team pitch your head of marketing or pitch somebody in your C-suite so that they kind of get used to how that conversation goes. Find a colleague, practice on them, record yourself on Zoom so that you can go back and kind of autopsy your pitch. It's absolutely critical to practice.
I try not to do anything in front of the mirror because the guy that's always there just drives me crazy.
Fair enough.
Let me interject with which I think is my last question. So we're talking a lot about sales process and the pitch and what you say and what you prep for. How important, maybe how important isn't the right word. What are some of the other things that you can do to try and give yourself an edge? So one thing I was thinking about is, does the location of that pitch matter? Like, when you're in your research, can you determine if like you should have that conversation, that sales meeting in their office, in a restaurant, or like what are the things that you can do to kind of adapt that to location or other things?
Well, you want it to take place in an environment that your prospect is most comfortable in. You want to lay the groundwork as much as possible for them to say yes. And the more comfortable they feel, the higher that likelihood. So I would go wherever they suggest. Most of the time you're going to want to go to their business. It saves them time, which they will appreciate. But, if you want to take them to lunch, fine. Just make sure that it's a place that they feel comfortable, that you can have that conversation. You don't want too many distractions, especially when you start getting into the price conversation. So, maybe stay away from loud coffee shops and things like that. But, that first conversation, you're probably going to want to have it at their office, again, where they feel comfortable.
So last question for me, as Matt mentioned, or as you mentioned, for a while there, you were running the MSP 501 program. So, I mean, you have had relationships with some of the best, most successful MSPs out there. So just give us a few kind of tips and tricks. What do the top performing MSPs do in sales that maybe you've noticed as a commonality?
Well, I'm going to sound like I'm repeating myself. I am. But the number one thing, again, compete on value, not on price. Walk into that conversation knowing what you bring to the table, knowing what you do well and what you're worth, right? The second one is practice. Practice makes perfect. Have your processes in place, really be buttoned up. Again, the more you practice that conversation, the more you kind of give yourself a roadmap for that conversation, the more comfortable you'll feel. And your prospects, your sales conversations, these people pick up on that. If you feel uncomfortable in the situation, in the conversation, they're not going to feel comfortable and they're not going to have that confidence in you. So know what you're worth, have your script, have your process, and don't be afraid to say, no, you're not a fit either. Again, knowing your worth.
Cool. And I actually do have one last question that I would like to know. So, what are some of the things that people do in sales conversations that they think is helping, but actually isn't? Like, is there like a don't do this kind of thing because it just comes off bad? Like, don't bring coffee, or don't give them coupons to KFC. Whatever it is. Like, what are those things that people think are good ideas for sales, but really aren't?
I think the biggest thing for me, and we touched on this a little bit earlier, is speaking more than you listen, right? So people like to talk about themselves. And yes, you're trying to present your value position and, trying to prove your worth, but you can't get in there and just, flip through a PowerPoint and expect them to sit there and stay tuned in and stay engaged, right? People like to talk about themselves. And the more they talk, the more you're able to uncover, oh, okay, so, in the future of this conversation, here's what I need to hammer on. Obviously this is of a big concern to them. So this is where I keep needing to circle back to, or whatever the case may be. But yeah, definitely. I see a lot of people, they have that pitch and they go in and they just kind of scream through their pitch, boom, 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 boom. They don't give the customer a chance to speak. They don't really allow for an actual conversation to happen. They're flipping through a PowerPoint or, whatever materials that you bring. And, doing that, talking more about yourself than listening to your customer talk about themselves is one of the biggest pitfalls for sure.
And if they say no, just throw in a free vacuum cleaner, and that seems to work every time.
There
right?
you go.
Take the Ron Popeil approach to sales and say, but wait, there's more.
There's more.
This is why I have 10 vacuum cleaners at home. It never fails.
You can never have, you always got to make sure you have enough to get rid of all of the dust. Which you strike me as a 10 vacuum cleaner kind of person.
One for every room. Yeah. Exactly.
One for every room and the car. And I bet you have that little tiny one for the keyboard too, that's like USB powered. Awesome. Kris Blackmon, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, what an amazing and an insightful conversation. And I can't imagine anybody who just listened to that and didn't walk away with something to try and like hone their pitch. Like that was a really, really great idea. Or you're right, maybe I do talk too much. Just have them to kind of think about what they're doing and hopefully get better. So if anybody like wants to learn more from you, reach out to you, contract your services to do sales training, like whatever kind of things that you do with JS Group, how can they reach you? How can they find you? Where can they go?
The easiest way is to reach out to me on LinkedIn, right? Just connect with me on LinkedIn, shoot me a message. And I'm always happy to just shoot you a link to my Calendly and, book a meeting. You don't even have to email me or call me. I'm always happy to have a conversation, but yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn and I'm more than happy to help.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for coming on. And I can't wait to catch you at a future event to talk about sales and marketing, or have you back on the show at some point to dive into another topic. Because I know we talked a little bit about marketing, but I know that you have a lot more insight in marketing than we got to today. So we'll have to save that for another day. With that, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, Zac Cramer will be joining us back again on the other side, and we will break down the show and we'll have a little fun. I will give you a little highlight. We're going to be talking about movie snacks, amongst other things. So guaranteed it's going to be a lot of fun. You're not going to want to miss it. We will be right back. And we are back now with, well, this is either part 2 or 3, depending on whether or not you just heard an interview with Kris Blackmon, the Chief Channel Officer at JS Group. If you did not, we will reschedule that and get her back, but hopefully it was there. I have no idea if it was good, but Rich, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that if the interview was there, it was good.
Yeah, I'm quite certain. If we, she's at the conference that I'm at right now as well. And so the reason we were saying before that segment and after that segment, if this happens, is because everybody here is running around and overscheduled and so on. And so we have it on the calendar. I'm pretty sure as we're talking now, it's going to happen. But you know what we, you are, more than you, ChannelPro Weekly listeners right now, because we don't actually know if that actually came together at this moment.
Well, and we were a little worried about flights too, with like the hurricane impacting flights, and like things might have to move around. So hopefully it was there. If not, like Kris Blackmon she's an amazing person. And if we didn't get her for this show, we will absolutely reschedule it and get her back on, because it's going to be a really good one. But hopefully it was there. Anyway, well, Zac Cramer is still with us here now on the other side of part 3. Unfortunately, wasn't able to be a part of the interview with Kris Blackmon, unless is he scheduled to join us tomorrow or no?
I kind of precisely because I knew this was going to be jumping around and we already had some time with him. I relieved him from having to be a part of that. So yeah, no, it'll just be us and Kris.
That's fine, but Zac is here with us now, and we are going to have a little bit of fun with Zac. We've got various games we like to play here on ChannelPro Weekly. We probably played 5 questions with Zac the last time he was on. He's like stretching his knuckles, getting ready. He's like,
getting ready for the game.
We're gonna do this. We're gonna get into it.
Yeah.
So we are gonna play a little bit of this or that. It's a game that we've been kind of playing recently, where we we pick kind of a topic and we try to find, our co-hosts, favorites of X topic. And we were kind of bantering about movies. We were talking about, we don't really go to the movie theater a lot, but, we were kind of talking during the break that, movie theater snacks really haven't changed much in the last, 30 years. It's a lot of the same kind of stuff, but everybody is usually very, very particular about the kind of snacks that they eat while watching a movie. So I think we're gonna do a little this or that and see if we can come up with Zach's favorite movie theater snacks. Rich, I'll ask you later because I am kind of curious, but why don't we let you go first? Why don't you set the stage for us to build from?
Okay, so you can only have one, Zach. You got to pick one or the other, and the winner advances to the next round here. And I'm gonna just start us out with an easier one here.
Okay.
And I'm curious to see if everyone considers this a no-brainer or not.
Yeah,
popcorn versus buttered popcorn.
I mean, buttered popcorn. Like that's not even. I stretched for this, and I don't even know why. Like that's. there. I have no questions.
Who eats non-buttered popcorn? Like seriously?
I do.
Do you really? You eat non-buttered?
I once dated a yoga instructor who ate not buttered popcorn. Like she was the most fit person I've ever met in my life, and she would eat popcorn, and there was no butter on it, and it made me sad.
Wow, I didn't know that kind of person existed. I probably is healthier though, so I guess that's a good thing. All right, so we're at buttered popcorn now. Let's like actually shake things up and make this difficult. We'll say buttered popcorn or snow caps, the little chocolatey eclairs with the little white dots on them.
Yeah, butter popcorn or snow cap. So here's why I'm going to go buttered popcorn. And it's not an easy choice, although it's a quick choice, is the little white bits get stuck in my teeth. And like, if you're watching a long movie and trying to like use your tongue to fish the little thing out from between it's no good. It's no good. Even though it's a delicious candy, it's not worth the tooth flossing that it takes to eat it.
All right. So we're anti-tooth flossing with movie snack candy. So buttered popcorn is still in the lead, Rich.
Yeah.
Where are we gonna go now?
Buttered popcorn or red vines.
Ooh, that's tough. We've gotten to the round where it starts to become difficult. I mean, red vine, you gotta love everything about the red vine, right? The texture when you're chewing it, it's got a good texture. It melts in your mouth if you just want to let it hang out, and just sort of enjoy the sugar slowly dissolving into your bloodstream. And it's got that red flavor, which what is it? It's not strawberry, it's not cherry, it's not raspberry. It's just, we all understand as Americans, the flavor red, and it tastes like red. You know what? I've talked myself into it. I'm going to say, if you gave me a choice between the buttered popcorn and the red vines, I'm probably going red vine.
All right, red vines in the lead. I'm going to still, I think, stick with the chocolatey approach here. There's got to be something chocolatey. And there's so many classic movie theater candies to kind of pick from that kind of encompass the world of chocolate. But let's go. You see, okay, so I was going to go Milk Duds. But not a lot of people like Milk Duds because they are very, very, very chewy sometimes, and similar kind of thing. It's really tough on your teeth. So I'm gonna go red vines versus Raisinets.
Now with Raisinets, you have come to one of my favorite candies, and I don't find them in the movie theaters that often anymore. I think the Raisinets have sort of fallen behind in popularity. I think maybe people inaccurately think that a raisin is healthy or something. It's still just a ball of sugar covered in chocolate. And I'm gonna take you one up on the Raisinette. I'll tell you what my favorite movie theater does. There's a movie theater here in Portland called the Hollywood Theater. It's an independently run nonprofit theater, and they have done something brilliant, which is they have taken some of the best candies and they offer the room temperature version and the frozen version. Yeah. They've got a freezer that's got Raisinets in it. It's got M&Ms in it. It's got Reese's Pieces in it. And so you go to the counter and you can get the frozen box of whatever the thing is. And personally, we're all familiar with the marshmallow test. You put a marshmallow on the table, you wait and see if the kid eats it. Like, I'm like a guy who gets the second marshmallow and waits to see if there's a third one. I have the patience of a sloth. And so for me, a frozen candy is an extraordinary thing just for its longevity, its flavor, and I've got to go. Frozen raisinette is a tremendous piece of candy.
Ooh, frozen. Rich, I think I hit a good one here. Raisinettes. Can you top raisinettes?
Yeah, it's gonna be hard to go up from that. I look forward to seeing you try, Rich.
I've got an idea that I'm gonna try because I think I get to go last this time because you went first. So
yeah.
Why don't we take one more stab each?
Okay, yeah. So, and I mean, do I get to freeze this as well, just so that we're on the same playing field?
Yeah, I mean,
yes, because I'm going to freeze my next one.
Okay. So I'm going to say frozen raisinettes versus frozen junior mints.
Damn it. That is, I mean, Matt, I'm sorry. I know you go next. He just got my favorite candy. I mean, if we were playing Battleship, that would be hit, right? Like that is, he sunk my Battleship. That is, as far as I know, that is in fact my favorite movie theater candy is a frozen junior mint. So well done, Rich, 5 stars. I think game over. I'll let Matt try again. Maybe he'll impress me, but like I think you actually might hit it.
I know. I wish I had gone first this time because you did exactly what I was going to do. I don't know if you see me freaking out when you said junior. No, that's where I was going next.
I mean, you're gonna have to go big or go home on this one, Matt. Like, just go be wild.
I know, and I got 2 ways I want to go. Because so I could go the Reese's Pieces route because like Reese's Pieces are delicious and peanut butter is delicious.
Yeah, sure.
But not everybody loves peanut butter, and some might argue it's not necessarily a movie theater kind of candy staple.
Yeah.
But there's one that I really like. I have never had them frozen, so I'm gonna have to say maybe frozen or not frozen. I'm not really sure, but let's say frozen junior mints versus Whoppers.
I appreciate you, Matt, and I appreciate you taking the chance, and I appreciate you going for it like that. To me, that's not even close. I'm not a Whopper fan. Right. Don't love the flavor. So yeah, that had no chance against the frozen junior mints. I'm gonna have to.
Not everybody loves malt. It's like people who love malt. I really love malt.
Yeah.
I like that.
Would the frozen Reese's Pieces have dethroned junior mints? I'm not sure it would have.
So my favorite thing to do is get a box of each and mix them, like a frozen Reese's Pieces with the frozen junior mints, because then you've got minty flavor, you've got chocolate flavor, you've got peanut butter flavor. I mean, it is a chemical flavor explosion. And in the movie theater, it's hard to tell necessarily which one I'm getting at any given time. So I don't even know what's coming, right? It makes the movie into a 3D experience. So yeah, I'm going to say my final recommendation is that people get both, mix them together, and just have a grand old time.
That's awesome. Well, kudos to Rich for coming up with frozen junior mints. We'll declare you the winner of versus, but really the winner is everybody who is now hungry and is going to go pick up some candy. Particularly, I'm literally going to go buy a box of junior mints and stick them in the freezer because I've got to know what that's like. I bet that's just heavenly and transcendent of great. So great stuff, Zach. Lots of fun. Thanks for playing along.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. You guys put on a fun show, and your live shows too. I love the way we talked about it a bit earlier, but the way you guys organize things, and it's not just, another session that's like security in the year 2022 as relates to threats based on the Visa MasterCards. It's like, it's the dating game. Like the ChannelPro events are always just more fun than anybody else's events. So I can't wait for them next year. We take a lot of pride in making and giving people their broccoli and making it taste good. By putting some butter popcorn on it. You put some butter popcorn on that broccoli. And that just delicious. I don't actually think anyone should try that at home. That sounds terrible, but awesome stuff. Well, we'll say goodbye to you in just a second. But Rich, while we kind of go here into the end of the show, why don't you tell us what we might have missed, because a lot of stuff probably happened last week that we didn't get a chance to cover because we didn't do a show, and tell us what might be coming up in the future. Well, this is actually an off week. We have we started on a bi-week, every other week kind of schedule with our In Case You Missed It post by our own James Gaskin over the summer. We're kind of sticking with that for a while. This is an off week for James. But in terms of what's coming up next week, so I am staying in Orlando as it happens, and the weather, the forecast is that things get much better than they are right now. And next week I will be attending a TD Cinex event, their community solve, very first ever community solve event, where they will pull together the post-merger, the 3 communities that Tech Data and Cinex ran independently. They're all kind of now part of TD Cinex, and they have we've never crossed the streams before and gotten all 3 of these communities in one place at one
they're going to do that next week, and I will be there to meet with the folks and see how that goes, and we can talk about that on next week's show.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to that, and everyone else should as well. Zac Cramer, thank you so much for joining us and being a part of the show. It's always a delight to have you on and get your thoughts and opinions on stuff. If anybody wanted to connect with you, learn a little bit more about your EOS kind of consulting business, and maybe take you up on that, where can they go? How can they find you?
You can email me, Zac.Cramer, ZAC.CRAMER at EOSworldwide.com, or just throw Zac Cramer into a Google search, and my site's gonna come up first for you. Yeah, I'd love to chat with anybody about anything to do with how to run your MSP business better.
Awesome. And I cannot wait to have you back on again sometime down the road, assuming you had fun and want to come back. And this is your second time on. If you didn't have fun, you probably wouldn't have come back this time. So we will look forward.
I would love to come back again in the future and to find out more about everybody else's favorite candies. Actually, wait, did we do this? Did we do Matt and Rich's favorite candies?
We did not. Rich, I did mean to do that. So let's take it before we say goodbye. We'll take a quick little sidebar here, and we'll just talk about our favorite movie candies real quick. Rich, what's your favorite movie candy?
Well, I will say my favorite movie snack is the unbuttered popcorn. And I don't go unbuttered because it's healthier. I just really don't like the greasy fingers, and I know that the butter is not actually butter. So popcorn, I'm really happy with that. But if I go with candy, it's actually Red Vines. I would argue that pound for pound, you're getting more longer lasting candy value with the Red. You can go an entire movie with a bag of Red Vines, and they go a long ways. It's about quantity, not quality, folks. Yeah. No. So my favorite candy, and I actually have to think back because I don't go to the theater a lot. But when I was but a wee lad and I went to the theater, I generally stuck to 2 boxes of things. It was either snow caps, but after a while, I kind of evolved from snow caps, and I would usually end up getting a bag of Reese's Pieces. And that was my movie candy. Like, I would just sit and kind of snack on those one by one. And I wouldn't like crunch a whole bunch of them at once. I kind of like put one in and just kind of let it dissolve and take in the peanut buttery goodness slowly, and I just let it ride the whole time. That was my favorite. So I'm a big peanut butter guy. I love peanut butter, and I do love malt. I have to say, like Whoppers. I know, Zach, it's not your favorite, but Whoppers is like kind of my would probably be my number 2. Like, I really like Whoppers, but when you buy the box of Whoppers, you don't get very many. And so I was always like, if I get a bag of Reese's, I like that'll take me further. But the Whoppers were gone in like 10 seconds, and that's not good. You got to at least be able to get halfway through the movie with your snack, right? Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, and I like popcorn, but it's not my favorite. I don't I don't have like this instant, like, I'm watching a movie, I have to have popcorn. Very rarely. I don't know why. Maybe it's because it does get stuck in the teeth. Maybe that's subconsciously the reason why. I don't know, but I do like popcorn when I eat it. So that's it. That's movie snacks for Matt and Rich as well. So thanks for sticking around to learn a little bit about that. And a big thanks to Zach for coming on and joining us this week. Make sure you go and check him out. And of course, what else? You should check out the ChannelProNetwork.com website. That's where you should go each and every day. Bookmark it, make it your homepage. There you'll find all the latest articles, news, resources, white papers, all kinds of stuff to not only keep you on top of what's going on in this crazy, crazy IT industry, but also give you a lot of really good information to help you with recruiting, with hiring, with managing your business, with finance, all kinds of like really, really good sound advice to help you with your business. So make sure you go and you check that out. And of course, subscribe to the ChannelPro Weekly podcast anywhere podcasts are found. I'm not going to name them all. You know where to find podcasts. And if you're listening to us, you've already found it. But subscribe to us on more places. Why not? And leave a rating, leave a comment. Again, if you like to watch on YouTube, hit the bell, hit the subscribe button. I don't know. There's a lot of buttons on YouTube. But leave a comment. It's always good. We like to read those. And of course, tell a friend and coworker, because why enjoy ChannelPro Weekly by yourself when you can enjoy it with the company of others and talk about the crazy things that we talk about here on the show. So to make sure you tell a coworker and or a friend or a house pet. I know Zach's cat is a big ChannelPro Weekly fan, tunes in every week. Puts the paws on the keyboard and makes some, it's random letters, but I speak cat, so I know exactly what the cat's trying to say. So thank you Mittens for tuning in each and every week. And with that, we're gonna say goodbye, and we'll see everybody in episode 247 next week. See you then.